ventricle has a much thicker wall than the right, and it's circular in cross-section, while the right ventricle is C-shaped. Here, we're looking backward into the mitral valve. To see it better, we'll return to the previous dissection and go round to a view from behind. The mitral valve, also called the left atrioventricular valve, has two cusps. They're called the anterior cusp and the posterior cusp, though in reality they're more upper and lower. Chordae tendineae from both cusps converge on two sets of papillary muscles. These on the posterolateral wall of the ventricle, and these on the anteromedial wall. Here are the same papillary muscles seen from the apex of the ventricle. Each group of papillary muscles sends chordae tendineae to each of the cusps of the mitral valve. Here's the mitral valve in motion, seen from the apex of the left ventricle. Here are the papillary muscles, seen very close. Above the mitral valve, we're looking upward and backward along the outflow tract of the left ventricle, toward the aortic valve. In this cutaway dissection, we can see the outflow tract of the left ventricle from the side. Here's the aortic valve. We've left intact part of the anterior cusp of the mitral valve, along with the chordae tendineae and papillary muscles. The anterior cusp of the mitral valve forms part of the wall of the outflow tract, so blood flows past it this way in diastole and this way in systole. Here's the anterior cusp of the mitral valve in motion, with the mitral valve opening below it and the outflow tract above it. Now that we've seen both ventricles, we'll move on to look at the two outflow valves, the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve, and also at the pulmonary trunk and the first part of the aorta. Here are the two ventricles, dissected so that we can see the outflow valves. Here's the aortic valve. Here's the pulmonary valve. Each has three cusps. The pulmonary trunk and the aorta are markedly dilated at their origins. On each vessel, the dilatation consists of three bulges, or sinuses, whose position matches the position of the valve cusps. To get a better look at the cusps of the outflow valves, we'll remove these parts of the vessel walls. Each cusp of an outflow valve is shaped like 1/3 of a parachute. Here the cusps are hanging loose. Each cusp has a delicate free border which closes against those of its neighbors. Here's the pulmonary valve in motion. In diastole, back pressure closes the valve abruptly, the three cusps pressing against each other to meet exactly at a point. Here's the aortic valve. It works in just the same way. Here's the opening of the right coronary artery, which we'll see in a minute. The left one is out of sight, down here. Now that we've seen the outflow valves, we'll move on to look at the two major outflow vessels, the aorta and the pulmonary trunk. To see them, we'll go to a more intact dissection. The pulmonary trunk passes backwards to the left of the aorta, then divides into the left pulmonary artery and the right pulmonary artery. The right pulmonary artery curves around above the left atrium, passing behind the root of the aorta and behind the superior vena cava. This early branch supplies the superior lobe of the right lung. This cord is the divided ligamentum arteriosum, the remnant of the ductus arteriosus, which connects the pulmonary trunk and the aorta in intrauterine life. Here's the aorta. It starts to the right of the pulmonary trunk. Its beginning is well hidden in the epicardial fat. In front of it is the right atrial appendage. To its right is the superior vena cava, and behind it is the right pulmonary artery. Next, we'll take a look at the coronary arteries, which provide the vitally important blood supply to the heart itself. The detailed branching pattern of these vessels is highly variable. What we'll see here is just one example. To see the coronary arteries, we'll look from above at a heart from which most of the epicardial fat has been removed. Here's the pulmonary trunk. Here's the aorta. To see where the coronary arteries arise, we've removed both atrial appendages. The left atrial appendage was here. The right atrial appendage was here. Here's the right coronary artery. It arises from the right aortic sinus, which is here. The right coronary artery gives off this branch to the upper part of the right atrium, then runs downwards in the right atrioventricular groove, giving off branches to the right ventricle. The right coronary artery passes round to the underside of the heart. Here it is again. Its terminal branch is the right interventricular artery. Now, we'll look at the left coronary artery. Here it is. It arises behind the pulmonary trunk from the left aortic sinus.